I'm Jon Lentz, City & State's Managing Editor, and this is Last Look. I'm joined today by Jose Calderon, President of the Hispanic Federation. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And recently, your organization put out a new report, La Gran Manzana, The Road Ahead for New York City's Latino Community. And it's a policy blueprint for the next mayor, the next city council. It has a lot of recommendations in it. Is there any, maybe one or two you'd really flag as key policy recommendations?
Well, it has over 150 recommendations, in fact, so it's quite a bit. It's divided among 9 areas, and obviously education being always at the very top of sort of concerns for our community, given the state of educational outcomes for our kids. And so I think that the recommendations we make in that particular are really important, but so are the other areas, right? So we focus on civil rights issues, right? The stop and frisk issue is a major issue of concern for our community overall. Issues around equity run across the report, whether it's health, whether it's immigration, whether it's economic empowerment issues, women's rights issues, etc. Again, there's 9 overall, but again, sort of one overarching theme is equity, right? And the need for greater equity for our community.
Now, stop and frisk, it's obviously one of the big issues in the mayoral race this year. Where do you stand on that issue?
So, we're very, very happy with the city council legislation that recently passed. We think, stop and frisk, has obviously come and gone, right? I mean, it's obviously, you were talking about major civil rights infractions, not only for the African American community, but certainly for our community. It was a policy that was, again, exhibited clear violations of our civil rights. So it needed to cease and desist. And obviously with, sort of the hope and the expectation is now with a new administration, and certainly with the legislation that just passed in the city council, that we will see a new day in terms of police policies as it regards to the way they're treating, our citizens.
Now, another issue I thought was interesting in this report, looking at education with English language learners and how that interacts with the new Common Core curriculum. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, we're very supportive of Common Core, right? Sort of the idea that we should be holding our kids to higher standards. We should be holding all of ourselves to higher standards. Obviously, educational outcomes are not where they need to be, especially when we talk about Latino and African American kids. And so our ELLs, unfortunately, are at the sort of low end of, sort of outcomes, right, for our kids. And now with Common Core, we see sort of the new scores, and it's just abysmal. There's no other way of putting it, right? And with Common Core, there needs to be some flexibility around understanding that, yes, we need to hold our kids to higher standards, our teachers, our principals, everyone sort of in the system, including parents. But, we have to understand the context of, some of where these kids are operating. Obviously, they're learning a new language, right? And you're holding them to the same standard as other kids. I think that there has to be some level of flexibility about how we're sort of judging and sort of marking these kids in the future, so that they don't get dejected, right, and sort of being pushed out of the system. So huge issues around Common Core in general. We really need to engage parents in terms of this process. Right now, I think that the administration has failed to do that during the first year, and we're hopeful that the next administration really looks at community and really looks at engaging parents and making sure that they're informed about what this means for them and certainly for their kids, and how they can support their kids moving forward.
Now, in the mayoral race, you have Bill de Blasio, the Democratic nominee. You have Joe Lotto, the Republican nominee. You also have Adolfo Carrion, a third-party candidate. Have you gotten much of a response from any of the candidates on these issues, or do you have a sense of how well they line up with your platform here?
Yeah. So we've had an opportunity to meet with Adolfo Carrion and also Bill de Blasio as well too, where we're actually scheduling a meeting with Joe Lotto in the coming days. And what's exciting about putting together this report, and it really came out of conversations that we were already having with a lot of the mayoral candidates, and saying, well, we need to put this document sort of on record and put it on paper, so that then we can go back to the candidates and really meet with them and really sort of get their positions on some of these key recommendations that we're making. And again, I think This is a fairly progressive agenda for the Latino community, and the Latino community tends to be a very progressive community. We have, as I mentioned before, serious concerns around equity issues when it comes to just general income inequality in the city. Affordable housing is a huge issue for our community, and certainly some of the inequities that we started talking about around education.
I'm also curious what you think about how important it is to elect Latino leaders. The next mayor looks like it'll be a white man, probably. The next city controller, probably a white man. Public advocate could be a white man. Is that a concern for you? How important is it to elect Latinos?
Well, it's extremely important. I think it should be extremely important for the city overall to have diversity, that you have an administration that reflects the population of the city. And so certainly that's something that we're keeping a close eye on. And we expect whoever gets elected to have a very diverse administration. And certainly when we think about citywide elected officials, it is disappointing that we are where we are, right? That we don't have a Latino, or it doesn't look like we're going to have a Latino holding a citywide office, and we haven't had one to date, right? So I think that needs to change very soon. Things being what they are right now, clearly whoever becomes the next mayor, whoever becomes the next public advocate, et cetera, right, controller, we expect those administrations to be very diverse and include top Latino talent.
And on the state level, the New York State Senate, I believe, is having a conference this weekend, the Unidad Latina Conference. It's something Dean Skelos has put on for, I think, 3 years now. You'll be participating in that. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the importance of this conference? And also, I think there's been some controversy in past years. Some Democratic Latino lawmakers didn't show up. Any thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think it's an opportunity to engage. I think, in the business, right, of advocacy that we have, it behooves us to work across the aisle, to push forward an agenda. We haven't agreed, obviously, with the Senate Republicans on the issue of the DREAM Act, for instance. I think that's an issue that to us we continue to work on, we continue to push. But this conference allows us an opportunity to really make the case and engage, and hopefully as we move forward that we can pass important legislation for our community, specifically, let's say, the DREAM Act. But it is an opportunity to engage, and Senator Skelos has reached out to us. We're a nonpartisan organization, as you know, and so it's an opportunity for us to connect and educate.
Jose Calderon, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that's it for Last Look. To check out other Last Look videos, go to our website, cityandstateny.com.